How Airbnb will cause the housing market to crash. Hey everyone, have you ever wondered how Airbnb might be shaking up the housing market? Let's find out why. If you've been following the headlines, then you'd know that there's been a lot of buzz about Airbnb and its potential impact on the housing market. Well, one major factor contributing to this conversation is the increased demand for short-term rentals. But how could something as simple as this cause a housing market crash? One key point to grasp is that when a property is used for short-term rentals, it's not available for long-term tenants. That means that homes and apartments that could have been rented by families or individuals looking for stable, long-term housing are instead being turned into Airbnbs. At the end of the day, there's an increased demand for long-term residential homes and, of course, decreased supply. Think about it this way. In a city where Airbnb is booming, landlords can often make more money in a weekend renting to tourists than they can in a month renting to a local resident. So it's no surprise that some property owners are choosing the more lucrative short-term rental route. But this reduces the housing stock available for permanent residents, which can drive up rents and make it harder for you to find an affordable place to live. Most importantly, we know that the increased demand for short-term rentals will inflate property prices. When investors see the potential for high short-term rental income, they may be willing to pay more for properties, driving up real estate prices in the process. This can make it even harder for first-time home buyers like you to get into the market. So basically, the increased demand for short-term rentals, largely facilitated by platforms like Airbnb, can lead to a shortage of affordable long-term housing. It could also lead to higher rents and inflated property prices. All of these factors combined can create instability in the housing market, and if not managed carefully, it could indeed lead to a housing market crash. I can't deny the fact that it's a complex issue, and it's being heavily discussed in the real estate scene. It can be difficult to grow the economy and stabilize the housing market at the same time, but it's not entirely impossible. This may seem somewhat similar to the point I discussed earlier, but there's a little distinction between the two that you'll discover later. Here's what you need to know. Airbnb's rapid growth has caused a surge in short-term rentals. Property owners see an opportunity to make quick cash by listing their homes or spare rooms on the platform. Sounds fine, right? Well, that's where the problem starts. As more properties turn into Airbnb rentals, it reduces the availability of homes for long-term renters. Why? Because landlords often prefer short-term rentals. They can make more money that way. This increase in demand for short-term stays causes property values to rise. When property values go up, so do the rents. It's simple supply and demand. Now, this is where things get tricky. Higher rents are great for homeowners looking to profit from Airbnb, but they're a nightmare for regular renters. If you're renting a place, you're likely to feel the pinch because landlords want a piece of that lucrative short-term rental pie. This can force renters, often lower-income families, out of their homes and neighborhoods through a process called gentrification. Gentrification happens when wealthier individuals move into neighborhoods, driving up property values and pushing out long-term lower-income residents who can't keep up with the skyrocketing costs. This factor is crazy because it can even lead to a loss of community, culture, and diversity in these areas. Airbnb rentals can also contribute to a lack of regulation in the housing market. Traditional landlords often have to adhere to various rules and taxes, but Airbnb hosts sometimes fly under the radar. This can create an unfair playing field and potentially decrease tax revenue for local governments, affecting public services like schools and infrastructure. It also wouldn't just be the home buyers feeling the heat though. Even if you're not looking to buy, if property values in your neighborhood skyrocket, your property taxes can go up too. It's a ripple effect that can hit your wallet hard. So the bottom line is this: Airbnb's surge in short-term rentals can drive up housing costs, displace long-time residents, and erode the unique fabric of neighborhoods through gentrification. It's a really complex subject, and it's essential to understand how it can contribute to the instability of the housing market. Still watching? Don't miss out on the most important bit about the housing crisis right at the end of this video. Regulatory challenges. Imagine you're a city planner or a local government official. You've got a responsibility to maintain order and ensure your city's housing market functions smoothly. But Airbnb, with its rapid growth, can throw a wrench in those gears. Why? Because many cities have zoning laws and regulations that were designed for traditional long-term rentals or hotels, not short-term Airbnb-style stays. This mismatch between old regulations and new sharing economy platforms creates problems. For one, it can lead to a lack of accountability. Property owners might rent out their spaces without adhering to safety standards or paying the appropriate taxes. That's not just a concern for local governments, it's also a concern for you as a potential Airbnb guest. Moreover, when cities try to regulate Airbnb and similar services, it can lead to legal battles and confusion. What's allowed in one neighborhood might be forbidden in another, creating a patchwork of rules that can be hard to navigate. But here's where it gets interesting for the housing market. Some cities have responded by cracking down on short-term rentals altogether. They see Airbnb as a driver of rising rents, reduced housing availability, and even pushing people out of certain neighborhoods. So they impose strict regulations or bans to try and curb the impact. What does this mean for you? Well, it can limit your options. If a city puts the brakes on Airbnb, it reduces the availability of short-term rentals, which can, in turn, put more pressure on the long-term rental market, potentially driving up rents and making it harder for you to find an affordable place to live. In some cases, Airbnb hosts who rely on the income might be forced to sell their properties, further reducing the housing stock. And when supply drops, while demand stays constant or increases, prices tend to rise. It's basic economics. The impact of Airbnb on housing affordability is very much interlinked to concerns about the housing market potentially crashing. You're looking for a place to live. Maybe you're renting, or perhaps you're even considering buying your first home. You've got a budget in mind, and you're hoping to find something that won't break the bank. But like we previously mentioned, the rise of Airbnb can have a significant impact on housing affordability. But affordability can have an even crazier effect on the market. Basically, it can lead to an increase in homelessness, especially in areas that are badly hit by the property price increase problem. This is usually due to the fact that while the prices for long-term properties increase, there isn't a corresponding increase in the income of employees, making it extremely difficult to find a home. In fact, it even goes beyond the homelessness problem. Did you know that more research has shown that lack of affordable housing can also force families to put their health at risk? Families decide to live with mold, rodents, vermin, and water leaks because they can't afford to move to another home because of the insane house prices. Eventually, these factors could lead to a housing crisis, and the rise of Airbnbs could be described as the catalyst for this crisis. Higher rents mean you might have to shell out more of your hard-earned money for a place to live, leaving you with less to save or spend on other essentials. This can put a squeeze on your budget and make it harder for you to find affordable housing, especially in popular tourist destinations or bustling cities. But it's not just renters who feel the heat. If you're looking to buy a home, the rising demand for properties that can be used for short-term rentals can push up real estate prices. It's like a bidding war. Investors are willing to pay more for properties with Airbnb potential, and that can drive up property values across the board. Will the housing market crash? Well, there's really no definite answer to that question because it's impossible to outrightly predict these things. But based on the factors I've discussed in this video, there is a huge possibility a crash could happen soon, because Airbnb's impact on the housing market is a complex issue with several interconnected factors, from reduced long-term rentals to rising property prices and regulatory challenges. Make sure you keep these factors in mind as you make housing decisions in a market that's constantly evolving. Stay informed and make choices that work for you. And I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!